Welcome to the Intercourse Show. I am your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. We are joining first this live stream from EU and NATO leaders. They are making an announcement about a Ukraine plan for the war. I haven't seen this. Let's go ahead and join in on this press conference that they're having and see what they're talking about.
Says you'll hopefully be able to get the war over without them. Can you? And PM Starmer, if I may, this domestic question. Overnight, you suffered a disastrous election loss in Caerphilly, a seat that's been a Labour-held seat for over a century. Was it a gut punch for you? And if you can't turn this around in the Senate elections next May, will you have to go? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Let me start with the question of Ukraine, because it is really important that we address the support that we're all able to put in, particularly as we go into the winter. And here we have the Coalition of the Willing today, you had the EU yesterday, but we are all working with President Trump, and therefore we're all working as one wider coalition here in relation to the support we need to put in for Ukraine. On missiles, we've put in more missiles from the UK in recent days and weeks, and pushing the case for long range. It is really important that we do have long range, and those discussions are ongoing. And of course, the protection of energy, because Putin is attacking the energy in Ukraine, and that needs protection. We've had discussion today about how we can stop those attacks and how we can better protect those energy suppliers. On the question of the US, what's happened this week is really significant. I think on the sanctions package and the bearing down on oil and gas, this week has been a very significant week because we went early with the measures that we, the UK, took. President Trump came in with really important measures that have had a real impact. And then, of course, the EU followed in with a further package of sanctions this week as well. And I think if I was to pick out one thing this week that was of most significance, it would be the combined impact of those packages, not only because of the impact they have on the Russian economy and the pressure that they put on, but also because they demonstrate the point that whether it's the Coalition of the Willing, the EU, or the US, we are all coordinating clearly in our efforts to support Ukraine and effectively doing so. The other thing I would point to is the progress made on Russian assets. Yesterday, the EU took a very important step forward, and there was absolute clarity in this afternoon's meeting that we need to see that progress come to fruition within a short timetable, because that would be a really material further support that we can put in for Ukraine. So when we said that the ambition really this week, if you like, is to take Russian oil and gas off the global market, we've taken a significant step forward. I would also add that the measures or the movement in position by India and China in relation to Russian energy and oil in particular are also significant. I think what you'll detect behind that is the sort of coordination and discussions that are going on, have been going on today, are going on between us pretty well all of the time, and having a very significant impact on Russia, because we must put Ukraine in the strongest position. This is going to be a hard winter, of course, particularly when it comes to protecting energy, and it is very important that whilst, of course, we want to get to a ceasefire and a lasting peace, we will, in my view, only get there if we put Ukraine in the strongest possible position. But we must never lose sight of that aspect of it. I mean, I'm really pleased to see the Coalition of the Willing so determined and united on this. Of course, to some extent, the coalition was set up to answer the question, what about security guarantees? But to see this wider coalition now working in a coordinated way, I think it really reinforces why the Coalition of the Willing is so important. In relation to the by-election, look, I'm deeply disappointed by the results. I'm not going to suggest otherwise. I spoke to the First Minister this morning, and clearly we need to reflect and regroup and double down on the delivery in Wales, and we clearly need to do much more. Vladimir, can I pass over to you on the first issue?
Thank you very much. for the question. So first of all,
Whoa, man, amazing car. When did you become a millionaire?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice for the younger generation.
we're not finding and we're not searching the way how to stop Putin and how to finish this war without the United States. So our plan is to make strong steps together. That is the plan, by the way, of Putin. He wants to divide us, to make us weaker. And that's why I think that we have to do everything together. First, of course, pressure on Putin, but really practically. First, sanctions, and you see 19th package and oil pressure from the United States. And I think this is a very strong step. The second point is long-range pressure between us. From the very beginning, it was about our drones, our long range. Then, God bless, we had such partners like UK and France, and the partners gave us Storm Shadows and Scalps. Then, only after that, United States joined us, and we began to use ATACMS. Not big number, but in any way, it's about together. Yes, and now we count on some more strong instruments, but we will see. Yes, then about air defense. Again, it's about together decisions. We really don't have something which can destroy ballistic. That's why Americans helped us, but also Europeans, because firstly, Europe delivered Patriot systems, but United States, they did it together because United States gave licenses for this. Yes, but I hope that we will in any way we will find a way how to produce our own systems. We have to do it, and I think this is the most important thing, that politically it's very important to go together. That's what about coalition or willing, and the result at the end will be security guarantees. And again, with the security guarantees, we need to have United States. This is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vladimir, I'm going to pass over to you to call your question, please.
Thank you so much.
Highly prepared.
Валерія Пашко, доброго дня, Суспільне.
Public Broadcaster of Ukraine. I have one question for all. It's on reparation loans. So, Mr. President, you were quite optimistic about the political decisions yesterday, but it seems not to have happened yet. What's your view on that? Is it disappointing now for you? And Prime Minister Frederiksen and Prime Minister Skov, why the Council conclusions were changed yesterday? Like the leaders didn't give the green light to the Commission to develop the legal framework for these reparation loans. What would the discussion look like yesterday? And Prime Minister Starmer, for you, is the EU could join to share this financial burden, because the EU aims to bring on board all the G7 countries? Thanks.
Yeah, I will begin. Thank you. So I think that the decision with Russian frozen assets is crucial for us, and but I think that there are three steps in this question with frozen assets. The first one is political decision, then practical decision, and then implementation. And I think that yesterday we've got political decision. That's why I think this is positive signal. Then practical decision. We hope that we can get it to the end of this year. And only after that, implementation. So that's, God bless, we can have at the very beginning of the year. But we will see. Thank you.
Meta probably makes sense.
Yes, let me be very clear. I think the idea of a so-called reparation loan is good. I haven't seen any alternative. And the idea of letting Russia pay for the damages they have done in Ukraine is the only way forward. Of course, there are some technical questions that has to be answered. There are a lot of details that we have to work on, but first and foremost, this is a political decision and a political choice. I support the idea totally, and I think we have to work in a way that we have a solution before Christmas Eve, so we are able to ensure that we can finance Ukraine for the next years. I know some colleagues find this way forward more difficult than I do, and we have to solve the problems, but I also have to say, what is the alternative? The alternative is not to let Russia win this war, and the alternative is not to ask all the Europeans to pay instead of Russia. So we need to solve the technical issues. I am sure that we will be able to do that, and then we will hopefully, I will work for that, have a decision before Christmas Eve.
Dirk, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. And of course, I fully agree with Mette. But let me just add a few points. The political decision yesterday was made, and that's very important, that we are going to financially support Ukraine in 26 and 27.
If you live in a Virginia zip code and have 0 DUIs in the last 5 years.
And that's an important decision we made yesterday. It's important for Ukraine, it's important for the European Union, it's important for all our partners. Then the second issue is that we talked about, and I think this is an important issue. Of course, you can say it's the technical or financial, but there are risks. We talk about mutualization of risks. And I heard a lot of countries and leaders yesterday say that they want to guarantee. And that's important because we have to share the risk, and it cannot be only put only on Belgium. And then third of all, I hope, just as Mette said, that we come to an agreement on the technical workout of the reparation loan, because financially it's going to be important, but also politically it's important to hurt Russia. And therefore I'm much in favor. Thank you.
Just linking the two, if I may. Firstly, the political decision that was made yesterday by the EU is really significant, and we shouldn't lose that. The question of the Russian assets has always been complicated and difficult, and there's no pretending otherwise. And it is really important that the detail is worked through. I think Mette is right to say putting a timetable around that makes complete sense, but I wouldn't underestimate the significance of the move that was made yesterday, and a very high level of agreement today that we need to make progress on that. In relation to your broader point about the UK and the EU in particular, yes, we are coordinating a lot of what we do, and that is a very good thing. It's a very good thing in the field of Ukraine. We are doing it much more broadly on defence and security and trade and the economy, actually. That reflects a number of things. Firstly, our shared and long-held belief that we are most effective in our support for Ukraine when we act as a group of countries, whether that's the EU and the UK working together, as we have done on most of the sanction packages. It's no accident that we act at the same time, or the wider group of the coalition of the willing. And just to emphasize something that Vladimir said, it was welcome to have the new Prime Minister of Japan on the call today. I think it was her first international engagement, and she made a statement of principle about where she stands. And it was a very strong statement to the coalition of the willing. The fact that she chose this forum as her first international contribution and was so clear and powerful in her words, I think emphasizes that coalition and the ability to bring together so many countries here is really important. So the first reason the UK and the EU are working well together is because of that most effective rule. The second is, since the EU-UK reset, I am proud and pleased to say we are coordinating much more across a wider range of issues. We live in a world where there are many, many challenges, many opportunities, and my strong view is that when the UK and the EU are able to work together, as we've shown we are able to, we're better able to meet those challenges. And of course, having Mark here heading up NATO gives you a sense of the depth of the group of countries now working together really pretty effectively
Okay, that was the EU and NATO leaders making a statement to the Ukraine conflict. They're proposing, I guess, what they believe is a way forward to this. I've heard them say that they want Russia to pay for the damages done, which is highly unlikely to happen. I don't know of anybody who fights wars, loses lives, spend thousands, if not millions of dollars, and then gives back all the things that they claim. That's foolish, especially when they're not losing the war. That seems irrational, and it's no wonder that there's been no deal done, because no one would sign up for that. Secondly, I've heard them, in a way, emphasize the point about security guarantees. I think it's unlikely that Donald Trump will give them security guarantees, because by giving them security guarantees, we are essentially saying we are now involved in this conflict and thereby are now against a nuclear powered country who is very capable of inflicting a lot of harm. I don't think it's advantageous for the US to take that position, which is probably why we haven't. But Trump has taken measures lately to push both sides to the table. He's now added sanctions onto Russia's oil, which is now going to affect our oil prices, as this is going to reduce the amount of inventory in the oil market. And I think he's also putting those sanctions on companies who try to bring the oil to market, i.e. India and a few others. So I don't know that this does much to de-escalate the conflict. If anything, I think it increases and does escalate the conflict. Now, for me, as I watch this press conference, this is Zelensky running off to the European leaders, who obviously have an incentive to keep this war going on for whatever reason, as a way of luring the United States into it. And they're essentially taking a press conference to kind of force Trump into siding more with them, as opposed to coming to the table for peace. I don't like this tactic. I think it's manipulative in nature. Them calling this press conference is not necessarily with any U.S. representation. And I don't know that, it really lends a hand to de-escalating the conflict that currently exists between Ukraine and Russia. I think at the core of this issue is the fact that Russia doesn't want to feel threatened by EU and NATO being on their border. There were an original agreement that was crafted to prevent that from happening in the first place. And ever since that agreement has been made, NATO have expanded far closer to Russia's borders, and Ukraine is the last straw. And because Ukraine was pushing so hard to be a part of NATO, where they can, call into action Article 4, which means a war against one NATO nation is a war against all NATO nations. That is an extreme threat to Russia and their interests. And they're, drew the line when their efforts to stop that plan of action went unheard by the Biden administration. And the Biden administration continued to allow Zelensky to believe that he can be a part of NATO. Putin voiced his opposition to that decision, and when no one took it seriously, he launched an attack against Ukraine, to make the point that that's not going to happen. And since then, he's acquired roughly 20 to 25% of the country. And right now, I think one of the areas of contention is Donbass. He wants to control that whole thing because there's some sort of base that they have there. And I think they view that as, spoils of war. And, it's a non-starter for them to have any NATO membership, or for them in any way, shape, or form to concede land that they've already acquired back to Ukraine. So to me, this press conference more escalates the matter rather than de-escalate the matter. And I don't think it's useful. Now, Trump did take measures further measures to, constrain Russia's economy by putting sanctions on their oil exports. We'll see how that plays, but I think Vladimir has viewed that as an act of aggression. And I think there's a couple other points that he's raised about if the U.S. does sell long-range missiles to Ukraine where they can inflict damage deep into Russia, they will view that as a provocation and therefore would act accordingly. My view as a praying Christian who does not want to see a nuclear war take place between the two nuclear powerhouses in the world is that we de-escalate and find ways to the table to solve this. It is not feasible to assume that Ukraine is going to get the land back. It is not feasible to assume that that Russia is going to all of a sudden stop the war if Ukraine gets security guarantees or join NATO, because that's why the war started in the first place. So to me, when guys are making statements like that, they really don't have the leverage, as they are losing the war, not gaining in strength or anything like that, to even make these type of demands. And it just means that they're not really serious and therefore want the conflict to continue. And my view is that it's kind of a foolish approach to say all these different things, knowing damn well they don't have the expertise, the know-how, or the strength to stand up against Russia on their own. Without the U.S., they're in up shit's creek. So I think we need to continue to de-escalate and get out of this conflict, as it is not something that is worthy of our time, our lives, or any more of our resources. So my view is find peace and, hopefully sustain it. All right. Well, that's my thoughts. Obviously, you guys may have some thoughts. I definitely encourage you to weigh in. If you're not already a member of the podcast, The Inner Core Show, I ask that you like and subscribe and join, but also share the video and comments so that, we can start a intercourse about this particular topic. We want to have dialogue. We want to have conversations from different points of view. So we welcome everybody's points of view. All right. That wraps it up for us. But for those of you guys who have plans for the weekend, we go ahead and wish you well and blessings until we meet again. All right, guys. Later.